Hey, how do you see money? Do you have it? Do you have enough of it? Perhaps you're feeling a bit behind compared to everyone else. I've certainly felt this way myself, and I've recently read a book that's really helped me reflect on these questions. And today I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to go through my top three takeaways of this book, The Psychology of Money. And I believe the ideas in this book will give you some new perspective on how you currently see money, and after the video, hopefully get a new perspective and perhaps a better way on viewing money. We often get carried away with accumulating more money, saving more, investing more, and being able to spend more. But ultimately, what we want is to live happier and healthier lives. Now, happiness can be quite complex because everyone is different, but as the book suggests, a universal denominator to our happiness is our ability to control our lives. The ability to do what we want, when we want, with who we want, for as long as we want to, is priceless. It is the highest dividend money pays. And after reflecting on this, I totally agree. I don't really want the money, I just want to have the freedom to do whatever the hell I want and not have to worry about money. Now, with that in mind, a common issue with our jobs these days is that it is constantly controlling our time. Back many decades ago, people often would be working with their hands and not having to do as much thinking, but that's completely changed now. We have a lot more jobs in service roles that require you to think. Around 40% of roles are in managers, professionals, and officials. And these roles require you to think, sometimes even when you're not working. It's no wonder that at times we feel this lack of control, and as we just discussed, can really hinder your happiness. So what can we do about this? God damn, it's getting hot. To help answer this, I'll share a quick story on Derek Sivers, a very successful entrepreneur and musician. When he was asked to share his story about how he got rich, Derek explained it like this. When he was 20 years old, he was working a minimum wage job, paying him about $20,000 a year in the US. He saved for 2 years to get $12,000, and that's when he quit his job to be a full-time musician. He figured if he could get a couple of gigs a month, it would pay for his cost of living, and that's exactly what he did. When the interviewer asked, "What happened when you sold your company for millions of dollars?" Derek responded, "That didn't make a big difference in my life. That was just more money in the bank. The difference happened when I was 22 years old." I'm not saying you should quit your job right now and go and pursue your passions, but it's definitely a valuable insight. For me, I work in developing banking products, and it's not something I can say that I love doing. So inspired by Derek's story, I've been looking at different roles that I might enjoy, and I've started looking at a few, but that's maybe for another video. Another takeaway is I need to stop thinking about work when I'm not working, as that really takes away from your happiness. It sounds counterintuitive, but I just need to care less sometimes. Or better yet, find a job that you can truly clock out from after you've finished. And finally, instead of getting more money, I want to focus on doing the things that I actually want to do. For me, it's doing more of the things that I love, my hobbies, and enjoying time with people that I like because, that's the fucking goal anyway. So go straight to the goal of doing the enjoyable things with your time instead of chasing the money. We often think that we don't have enough money, but how much is enough? All of our financial goals and situations are different, but let's have a look at a real life story to this question. This is a story on a man called Rajat Gupta. Rajat was born in Kolkata, and he was born in a very poor family. He later became the CEO of McKinsey, one of the top consulting firms in the world. He was a board of director for Goldman Sachs, and he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He has what we call generational wealth, an amount of money that we will never accumulate in our lifetimes. But what happens next was he took part in a fraud known as insider trading, and he was caught. He went to jail and his reputation went to shit. There's a similar story by someone named Bernie Madoff who created a Ponzi scheme when he was already very successful. He also went to jail and his family hated him when he was caught. There's a very well-made documentary on Netflix called Madoff. If you're interested, check it out. It's actually really, really world made. So I have a few takeaways on this, and the first one is to stop moving the goalposts. Like the story I just mentioned, it gets dangerous when you're always looking for more money, more power, more prestige. Having goals are cool, but just be conscious of continually pushing yourself to want the next best thing. Living like that makes it really hard to be satisfied of anything. You can literally have millions of dollars already, but if you continue to push the goalposts, that will still not be enough. Stop comparing yourself to others. Quite self explanatory, and you may have heard this before, comparison is the thief of joy. You can have enough and live a joyous life, but if you're always comparing yourself to others, there's always going to be someone who's doing better than you. Or there's always going to be someone who you think is doing better than you, especially in our state of, social media where highlights are shared and less of the opposite. A point I would say on that is to practice gratefulness, focus on the things that you do have. For me, I can think of how fortunate I am to have a family, to have a roof over my head, and just have food on the table. These are things I can focus on instead of thinking of what I don't have and comparing myself to maybe people who are above me. And finally, there are things that are never worth the risk, no matter the potential gain. This one really helps me make a decision. When I was offered a job a couple of months ago, the job was a bit questionable, but it had the potential to pay me really good money. And at the time, I actually weighed my pros and cons a little bit and thought about what I wanted to do. But after reading the chapter, it became very clear to me, why the hell am I even thinking of this? It's not worth the risk for more money, and it's definitely not the way I want to make money, and it definitely does not align with my values. So you can keep this one in mind and use it how you see fit. Remember to keep our friends Rajat and Madoff in mind. The third takeaway is to be reasonable rather than being rational. You're not a spreadsheet, you're a person. You're a screwed up, emotional person. You don't need to optimize for what theoretically makes the most amount of money, but rather focus on what helps you sleep better at night. And people tend to forget that. There's a very interesting example that's provided in the book. I don't remember it off by heart, so I'm just going to pull the book up and I'm going to kind of summarize this example for you. So basically, in 2008, there was a pair of researchers from Yale who done a study to show how you can supercharge your retirement funds by using what they call a 2-to-1 margin. And what that means is for every dollar that you own, you should try and get $2 of debt to invest into the stock market. And they suggest that this is a much more optimal strategy. In fact, it is 90% higher compared to a life cycle fund. And the rationale is because even when you are left completely wipe out when you're younger using the 2-to-1 margin and the market drops say 50%, they're saying the researchers have showed that if you're the saver and you continue to invest into the stock market in the long run, you will be better off with this investment strategy, the 2-to-1 ratio. The math works on paper, it's a rational strategy, but it is absurdly unreasonable because no normal person could watch 100% of their retirement funds evaporate and be so unfazed that they continue to carry on with this strategy undeterred. They'll probably quit and look for another option and maybe sue their financial advisor. I just thought it was a pretty funny example, so I wanted to share that. But yeah, that talks to the point of it's okay to just be reasonable and not be completely rational. Some real life examples could just be, putting down a 30% payment on your home loan instead of 20% or even lower, even though that's probably the more optimal strategy because you feel safer putting a bigger sum out so you have less debts. Another example from the book is the author actually shared they have personally paid off their own home. Obviously, that's a luxury to have in this day and age. But you could argue, and many would argue that paying off your house is not the most financially strategically best thing to do because you can actually use your money in other areas like in the stock market, or you can use some of that money, the equity in your house, to maybe buy another house, another investment property, and build your wealth that way. But yeah, what we don't consider is we don't have to be completely rational about this because at the end of the day, we are humans, we're not a spreadsheet. And we need to also consider how our situation makes us feel. And that's the whole point. For me personally, I'm choosing to put a large sum of my money into the stock markets, like an index funds, like the S&P 500, which usually returns 8 to 10% per every year, and this is over decades of data. Now, are these the most returns that I could get? No, probably not. But for now, they are quite reasonable for me to put my money and not have to worry about, too much about where to put my investments. Personally, I am a little bit more risk tolerant because I'm still quite fairly young. So I do invest in other things like crypto, and other individual stocks. But yeah, the main takeaway for me is just not to stress being overly optimal with my investments and just do whatever works for me at this time. Now, to quickly summarize, the three takeaways were: seek control of your life rather than money itself. Number two, consider that you already have enough and stop extending your goalposts. And lastly, be reasonable rather than rational. That's all I wanted to share today. If you have any other, money psychology tips, I would love to hear them. So please leave them in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.